Hi, I'm Rodi Srivastava,
I'm Anuradha Nagraj.
and this is The Migration Story.
Hi, Roli,
Hi.
and welcome to this next edition of our podcast on Ask Us Anything. How have you been? How has your summer been?
My summer was short lived in Bombay.
That's
It
true.
wasn't that bad, but now when when it should be raining heavily, it's not. And our May wasn't as bad. Something similar to what we are hearing from Delhi, also, right?
Yeah, true. Bangalore also, but Bangalore was hot, I think, in Feb, March.
Yeah,
But the thing is also that I think because we keep reading about heat in so many cities, at least when I'm looking at the newspaper or things, I'm always somehow heat has been in the news so much over the last 4 months that it just feels that everywhere in India has been really uncomfortably hot.
and which
this
is a
year.
good thing that there's so much reporting on it, that we are reading so much more about it. In fact, I just saw some video yesterday which was talking about the heat wave in Kashmir.
Just a couple of days back, Srinagar registered 35 degrees, which obviously broke a last 20-year record. 20 years back,
So there are new records everywhere. So even if your city has cooled down or whatever, there's a heat wave elsewhere.
Correct. That's so
I
true.
also remember the heat wave stories from Uttar Pradesh and other media outlets on the back-breaking heat the summer this year.
तापमान और ज्यादा बढ़ चुका है, यानी कि जून की ये गर्मी जो है लोगों को और तड़पाएगी। 45 डिग्री के पार जो है वो आगरा का तापमान जा चुका है। तो फिलहाल गर्मी लोगों को सताने के लिए पूरी तरीके से
So it's been pretty harsh, though
Yeah.
everything has changed, right? Rainfall patterns have changed.
Correct. Heat has been such a conversation. I don't remember summer being such a big conversation. I mean, India has had hot summers. I mean,
Right.
it's known for it. But growing up, summer was not at all associated with this. It was associated with many other things, including mangoes,
Mangoes.
and holidays and, things
I
like that. But yeah, now unfortunately it is like this, and its impact is also being felt really unequally amongst people, right? So
Very much, very much.
I think this conversation which we are having now, actually, as it is raining in Bangalore, it has just started drizzling near where I stay. But also, we had a similar conversation 5 months back, trying
Right.
to figure out how is summer going to be. And I think we were preemptive in thinking about doing a series on heat.
Right. For the next series, I think we need to start thinking about our stories from December, because thinking about them in April, May is almost kind of already very late. Yeah.
Yeah, because I do remember that our heat ship series, which we'll talk about in more detail in this podcast, it was on such a tight timeline. We need to do it before the first rains come,
Yeah.
and then there were so many around it. So yeah, let's maybe just start by going back to the ideating table and how we kind of conceived the thematic kind of way of covering this.
Right. But for our listeners, I think I'll also do a quick recap on the Heat Shift series. So we did a series of about 7 stories, I guess, Anuradha. When we started planning the series, we knew we had to tell human stories. We knew we had to kind of zero down on the experiences of people who were experiencing this heat in ways very unequally. So we did 3 video stories. One was focused on hawkers.
मैं यहाँ 30-35 साल से ठिया लगाता हूँ। गर्मी इतना पड़ रहा, तिरपाल हटाओ जी। ये
मेनली यही है कि उनको ये समझ ही नहीं है कि उनके बॉडी टेम्परेचर कितना रहना चाहिए। अब IMD की जो गाइडलाइन है उसके हिसाब से 37 डिग्री से ऊपर अगर आपका बॉडी टेम्परेचर जाता है तो आपके जान को खतरा हो सकता है। आपको बकायदा
The other focused on patients and their relatives who are camping outside AIIMS in Delhi because they've come here for treatment. They can't afford hotels.
एक तो पहला कीमो के लिए, दूसरा फिर मेरे अमीनो की थेरेपी चलती है, अमीनो के इंजेक्शन लगते हैं। ठीक है, इस बीच में क्या होता है कि कभी कभी मुझे यहाँ बेड नहीं मिलता है।
And the only other spaces for them to live in are these lodges, which are almost always packed to capacity, so there's no space for them. And the third video story we did was on a delivery rider, the gig worker story.
तो इधर का हाथ दे से तो इधर कितना फर्क है। रेस्टोरेंट वाले से पानी मांगो तो रेस्टोरेंट वाले बोलते पानी है ही नहीं। मैंने यार आप लोग तो पीते हो पानी वही दे दो भाई थोड़ा सा। तो बोला हमारा पानी है ना पैसों का आता है।
And in the tech stories, we did the Ludhiana story, which was interesting because it's the bicycle capital of the country in terms of the number of bicycles it manufactures. The other story was from Dindigul, from a garment hub, and how the garment workers there were working under the burden of this heat stress. And another one was from Bangalore, an informal settlement in Bangalore where it was just too hot to be living. And I remember that story was co-published by The Guardian, and their headline was very good. It said, "The fan just throws hot air." And I felt, yeah, that's like exactly what is happening across informal settlements in the country. And we did one more story from Landor, which is a hill town near Mussoorie. And it's getting back to capacity, which is drawing in tourists and migrant workers who see job opportunities there. But the town is bursting now, and they are clamping down on the number of visitors. So this is, in a nutshell, the entire series.
And yeah, when we were thinking about it, I think one of the things we realized was we were looking at urban centers. I remember having discussions about which cities to choose, and also kind of discussions around within these cities, there are so many challenges, which are the ones we want to focus on for the time being. And which is what led us to this idea of looking at largely the working community in urban centers, and also looking at them in various settings. So them in their homes, them at the workplace, and them also, of course, just commuting to and fro from work. I think that was our starting point for this series.
Right.
And from there, then, of course, we took it up and started expanding on it. This also explains how the migration story works, because I think we have a reader who wants to understand better about what draws us to do this work and how we do it. So really, I think this is something that we use to explain this broader question that has been asked by there's no formal name.
He or he says they are an aspiring biophysicist. We would request you to please identify you then. So we would love to learn more about you. And thank you so much for your questions. You have sent a list of questions. So you've asked what initially drew you to cover the issue of migrant workers. You've also asked what kind of impact do you hope your reporting will have on public, private sector, policymakers. For these two, I would request you to tune into our first podcast, which is where Anuradha and I, about a year and a half ago, we discussed all of this, because at that time, a lot of people had asked us these questions, and we are both journalists and we were colleagues, and we launched this together in January. And you'll have more detailed understanding of our reason for launching the migration story, why we are doing what we are doing, everything on our first podcast. When I had returned, I remember having a conversation with Anuradha that this entire migration thing seems to be like the common thread, because earlier stories too, which she and I had been working on.
And one of the things I realized that we were consistently thinking was that we were reporting a very small part of the story we were seeing on ground. So we were going to the field and we were seeing these stories, taking copious notes and coming back and telling 1/4 of it.
Correct.
For whatever reason. I think that's where the idea sort of came about. And
you also asked how can readers or viewers best support or engage with this issue beyond just consuming the news. Anuradha, you want to take that up?
So I think one is to just keep yourselves very informed, which is consuming the news, of course. But the other thing is probably also to enable people to tell these stories. So, by becoming a subscriber, and if you have read something that you think, made you think or made you pause, gave you a new perspective, then to share it with others who might also be interested in it. And then, of course, if, for example, in our Heat series, we've talked about gig workers. We've talked about a lot of people that you actually may be engaging with on a everyday basis. So, of course, just being kind fellow humans probably would also work well. And some of the things that you're asking us, I guess we will try and explain through the Heat Shift series, Roli.
Also, she or he or them have asked us about the public perception of migrant workers, and what are some common misconceptions about migrant workers that you wish people better understood. Thank you for your questions, and which means that you're following our work and reading our website. But these are exactly the kind of questions that we are answering through our stories. And there is no black and white answers to these questions. A lot of our analysis stories, a lot of our ground reports shine a light on how migrants are perceived. Like Anuradha just mentioned the gig worker video. There's one instance there, and
बहुत जगह है ना बाहर से ऑर्डर देते हैं, यानी कि बहुत जैसे समझते हैं हमारे शरीर के अंदर ना, अभी देखो अभी मैं नहा धो फ्रेश होकर जा रहा हूँ काम पर, ठीक है, वो रेस्टोरेंट वाले सोचते हैं पता नहीं हमारे शरीर के अंदर क्या लगा हुआ है, बोलते बाहर खड़े हो, जैसे कि पता नहीं, अरे हम भी इंसान हैं एक तरह से। वो
where the gig worker is saying that, am I an untouchable? Like the restaurants wouldn't allow me inside. Like I've taken a bath, I'm wearing fresh clothes, but the restaurant wouldn't allow me inside. So we find these misconceptions and we address them in our storytelling. It's not like a separate tool for us to bust myths around migration or migrant workers, but we do that consistently across our stories and analysis pieces and our videos.
There are a lot of views people have about workers, and I'll give you examples through some of our stories itself. Now we've done this story about Muslim, Bengali speaking Muslim migrant workers. And you would have also, I'm sure, read it in other spaces as well about just this notion, stereotyping them to be sometimes not from the country, stereotyping them in many ways for the work they do, etc.
Right.
These, of course, exist. And our aim is, through the stories we tell, we want them to tell you that this is not true. So, which is why we also do these deep dive stories where they themselves are talking to you in a way, talking to the reader or the listener and telling you that, look, we are doing a work, we move because sometimes out of choice, sometimes no choice. And this is our story. And that is our way of kind of also countering public perception, which could be negative sometimes. Sometimes it's not about positive and negative, but sometimes it's just about something, meaning an issue or a person just being invisible, which is what we kind of found in our heat shift stories, right? That we just found that people are working and toiling, and it's just such a given that sometimes people are also not able to articulate the experience of extreme heat because it's just become a thing and nobody even stops to think about it, you know. And I think that is something that brings us to the second question, which comes from Ankita Bhatkhande, and she is asking that heat is an invisible disaster. Unlike floods or cyclones, it doesn't always show up in dramatic visuals, right? So how did the team think through the visual storytelling and narrative techniques to make the impact of heat palpable to readers?
So Ankita Bhatkhande, she's head of communications, gender and climate at Asar Social Impact Advisors. Thank you, Ankita, for sending your question.
If you look at our stories, when we were thinking of them, I think heat, like you correctly said, is very difficult to capture. And as I was saying earlier, even people are unable to articulate the challenge they feel with heat because it's just such a, if it's a flood, you can see that people are in knee-deep water, or they've put their stuff on top of something, right? It's something that you can see and understand. I think full credit to the reporters who did these stories and took photographs as well, the photographers and reporters who took them. And there are very small ways small ways in which this came across, particularly in text stories, right? One was, for example, in the Ludhiana story, our lead image is of a person cycling, right? You can just see his handlebar, but what you see in it is this packet of buttermilk, which is so telling about what heat can do. And also in our heat, indoor heat story, right, of people living in these informal settlements, just the striking thing was just the visual of how little space, how cramped the space is, and this fact that particularly, you have mentioned gender, how there's this woman saying that, my husband and sons can remove their shirts when it's too hot and feel a little cooler, but me or my daughters can't do that, So in the night, when it's really hot, there's no other way of cooling down. Like you can't take off your clothes and feel a little cooler. And I thought that those are some small ways in which we could, illustrate the impact of heat.
Yeah.
And I think my favorite, of course, is the visual of these two garment workers eating ice cream,
Yeah.
all covered up. And also how that ice cream is a luxury because it's so linked to how much income they get and how they can't take too much leave even if this heat stress is impacting them, because then their income dips. I think these were some of the things that, when we were looking at these stories at a whole, or when we were looking at them at Edit and looking at the photographs,
Yeah.
I think these were ways we thought we can show what
Yeah.
heat does.
I'll also add to the visuals a bit the one from the Bombay slum, where this woman is posing for a picture which she has a cooler, she has a fan, all like a Bombay tenement is like just about 6x10 or something, and she's packed it with whatever cooling appliance that she could find. The story was on the sale of cooling appliances. And that picture was telling she's just standing in front of a kitchen platform, which is like a makeshift table, and all these appliances around her. So that was another interesting visual. Also, I think I'll go back to the Ames story, the patients and relatives. I think the video journalists there did an excellent job of capturing people sitting in the heat or outside on the footpath. Of course, like you said, we can't show heat like we can show other snowfall or floods or glaciers. But here, just the visual of people sitting in the blazing sun, waiting for their turn inside the hospital or for a meal, was quite telling. So, and I think we didn't imagine it as much, but it was the reporters who went on the ground and took the visuals who should be credited for it. And there's one, the hawkers video, the video on hawkers. There's an interesting bit there where the union leader, he's reading out the demands that they have of the government, that at least put some shade there, whatever. And in the middle, he just wipes his forehead with his handkerchief. So that also, but those are things that are not planned. They just came about.
He has a second part about how can we better connect to mainstream reporting to drive urgent action as a systemic crisis, not just a seasonal one. People, if you have fallen ill, your income has dipped during that heat wave, it does impact the months that come later. If you have migrated and there are issues with the heat, it does impact your overall healthcare expense that goes up. I think our attempt is to keep telling the stories consistently. Yeah, I think that is the only way for these issues to stay in public domain and to probably speak to policy at some point.
Yeah, to better connect these dots, we've also done these, our Earthshift column focused on the urban heat action plan. And we also did a wrap up, as in we did a bulletin on all the heat action plans that are there in different cities. And this column and this analysis looked at whether they were mindful of the informal workers, were these heat action plans mindful of people living informally in these cities. So these are journalistic ways of possibly, like Anuradha said, like you said, that they should eventually speak to policy, that these omissions of migrant workers, these omissions of informal workers or people working outdoors in heat action plans, their health and education, the impact on their health and education, all of these should finally find their way into these heat action plans with consistent reporting on the subject.
Yeah, and I think one heartening thing that we see, and that comes through subscriber letters like that of Archana Patne, where she, at least this, she's mentioning the migrant delivery rider video where we're talking about a day in the life of a gig worker. And, I'll just read it out because I think it sums it up really well. She says, inside a brutal day with a migrant delivery rider is an incredible and super relevant story. We order food, groceries, and many other such items without batting an eye or thinking about the delivery people and the adversities they may have to go through. The gig economy has reached such a large scale that it certainly needs some rules on payment and work conditions to be drafted and announced by the Indian government. Thank you for showing us another side of the home delivery model and appreciate the work of the unseen heroes. So I think here, for one, you have one person who is saying, okay, I see this, I understand it, and I recognize the work they do. So I guess baby steps.
Yeah, baby steps indeed. And thanks Archana Patni, a fintech professional who wrote to us. And thanks also for subscribing to the Migration Story. We love to hear from our subscribers. And it's always heartening to see when our subscribers kind of let us know what they found interesting, informative, or they also at times point out that this is possibly a story that your team can explore. So we would love to hear from more of our subscribers on our next podcast. And I think pertinent to bring in Purpose here, their People First initiative was very timely and very relevant to the times that we are living in, the climate uncertainties that we are living in. And the entire initiative is looking at informal housing and the impact of heat on people living informally. The collaboration helped us cast a net wide and bring in reporters from across the country to work on these stories, while also adding a lot of heft to the reporting from their research and experience. I think we as an independent digital news media outlet who survive on subscriptions and the support of like-minded organizations that wish to see this kind of reportage to go out to mainstream these subjects, it's important for us to also discuss these stories to show what support of an outside organization, a non-media organization, what it can do in terms of bringing important stories in the public domain and voices in the public, underreported voices in the public domain.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, we discuss this a lot, but one of the things on which our platform is also largely based is the idea of collaboration.
Absolutely.
Because I think the more we want to tell, the more we want to do this, the only way ahead is to collaborate. And the Heat Shift series was born out of one such collaboration.
Yeah. Do you have any other thoughts, Anuradha, before we wrap up our short and sweet Heat Shift podcast?
Yeah, well, I guess as we move into monsoons, there will be a whole different lens of what is going on in terms of the impact of erratic weather in different parts of the country, and we hope to keep bringing you those stories as well. Yeah, but we'll put a link to all the stories we mentioned in our description box, so please do read it and do engage with us, because this is something that impacts all of us. It would be lovely if we can stay in touch.
Absolutely. And just to add that we are able to do these ground reports, do these video stories, do these photo essays, text stories, all of that requires a lot of resources. And we are able to do that with the help of our subscribers, people who support us, organizations and individuals. So we would encourage all our readers, all our followers on our various social media channels to show their support to the Migration Story, so that we can continue doing these stories and look at and possibly keep working towards mainstreaming the migrant workers' voices and bring you interesting and informative ground reports through the year and for many years. So thank you so much.
Check out our website www.themigrationstory.com for more content. You can subscribe to our podcast on YouTube and Spotify. The audio editing and sound design is by Akshay Ramuhalli. Stay tuned for more stories on migration.
Hi, I'm Rodi Srivastava.
I'm Anuradha Nagraj.
And this is The Migration Story.